Do you want to introduce or should I?
Yeah, I will take it. Hello everyone. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon as per your time zone. Welcome to the Bella Vista Salesforce Developer Group. Thanks for registering and joining the session. We have Nikunj Doshi, Salesforce Certified Technical Architect with us, who sharing about when to code and config plus code, and especially he is sharing with which particular tool to use and when. Congratulations, Nikunj, for your recent achievement for the Salesforce Certified Technical Architects. Yeah, it's really amazing and proud of you. And little bit about myself. I am a Shaktivel Mades. I am a Salesforce MEP, platform champion, and community group leader for the Bella Vista, Western Sydney, Australia. I am actively available for the social channels, so you can reach out to me anytime. So today, Ajita, as mentioned, we have Nikunj with us. He is sharing with us about the code, when to code, and config plus code. And the end of the session, we planning for the 2 Salesforce certification voucher to the random participants. For that, you go to the link http://bit.ly/pv voucher. So fill your details so we can use that information to pick the random participants for sharing for the Salesforce certificate voucher winner. Group overview, yes, we have the community group. As I mentioned, Bella Vista Salesforce Developer Group. Go to that group detail page and join the group using that button and participate in our activities either as a participant or if you are interested to share any technical knowledge with the group, please let us know. We will organize. And we have the chatter group on Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube channel also. So please go ahead and follow those channels. And other than the Western Sydney Bella Vista, we have already the admin group and developer group. And Sydney have bunch of groups already available. So go ahead and involve in the Trailblazer community group. As I mentioned, participate as a speaker, also participate as attendees and learn and share and execute the plan. And upcoming meetings, if anyone interested, as I mentioned, please go ahead and fill the form, or even you can reach out to me in the social channel. We will try to organize in the upcoming months. And yes, share your love to the social channel. It's always important appreciation about the community group and lead to the social channels using the hashtag. In that note, I'm hand over to Nikunj. Over to you, Nikunj. Please share your screen and go ahead and stop sharing.
Perfect. Just confirm you're able to see my Chrome with the presentation.
Yes.
Sorry, am I sharing the right screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. Thanks. Perfect. Thanks a lot, guys, for this opportunity. I want this particular session to be interactive, so I would probably seek responses from you at multiple locations. The reason being that this particular topic, in terms of when to code, config, or config plus code, and essentially which particular tool or tools to use when. This is what we face on a day-to-day basis, and this is just an attempt to find a pragmatic approach to our daily dilemma. So we'll go through it, but yeah, I'll probably just introduce myself. Myself, Nikunj Doshi. I currently work at Deloitte Digital as a senior manager / technical architect. Recently got my CTA and been working in Salesforce space for 8+ years, based in Sydney, specifically Western Sydney and Parramatta. And that's just a bit about me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or else follow a blog which I once used to write. I hope to write still writing and reactivating that one day. But yeah, there are good stuff on that particular blog with links to GitHub with the source code. So that's a bit about me. Just a disclaimer here, by no means I am an expert on this particular topic. Given that this Salesforce as a platform keeps evolving and there are new things every day. So this is an approach, this is an attempt to just share what I know, point to the right directions and also learn from the group. Okay. So I'll quickly touch in terms of what I plan to cover in this session. The key reason in terms of why should we care. All folks on the call would have some or the other incident and they would understand why this particular topic is so near and dear and important to all of us. But I'll still cover it in terms of what happens if we do not care about this topic. Then, yeah, Salesforce lately have published quite a few knowledge resources in terms of helping folks like you and me make decisions in terms of best practices. So there are quite a few content already out there. So we will just go and touch and cover those content. So that and that just a disclaimer again, that content keeps evolving with every Salesforce release. So you need to go and use them on a regular basis. So bookmark them. Uh, I'll just give an example of what a sample code plus config record triggered solution looks like and why it is important to think from a config perspective first. So we'll just cover on that point with an example, couple of examples, and then I'll just what do I have to add more to what is already said. So Salesforce has quite a few things. So what I do need to like again from my day-to-day experiences, there are a few tips and tricks which I would like to share, and then probably we'll have a Q&A at the end and opportunity for all of you to share your thoughts on this particular topic. Cool. So beginning with why one should care. Why should you care about what sort of tools we use or when or the code we write or config we write? First of all, it's a daily dilemma. So those building on the platform as an admin, as a developer, the technical lead or technical architect designing solutions, this is a decision that we need to make on every other step. The reason being, there is never a one way to do things. There are multiple ways and multiple tools available at our disposal to deliver things. So we need a way. Yeah, it's a decision that we make, and these decisions that we make have a lasting impact. Hey, sorry for that. Sorry, was getting another call. Yeah, the things. Yeah, so our decisions have a lasting impact on overall health and the success of the implementation, and the complexity just compounds. If we do things right, have the foundation right, it's simple. But yeah, I'm pretty sure you would have walked into an implementation just to realize how messy or how not scalable that particular implementation is. And the third reason that we should be caring about this is an ever-growing platform. So meaning that there is always a better way to do things. What was optimal or the best solution yesterday might not be the optimal or best solution today. So we need a way to keep ourselves up to date, and that's where the meetup like this and the resources that Salesforce publishes come into it. So yeah, sorry. And the fourth reason is probably what goes around comes around. So with this particular thing, what I mean is, yes, you might rush a decision at the start of the project and pay the price towards the end of the project, or else probably you do an implementation and you walk away into some another implementation and someone else might need to pay the price. But then what might happen that you might walk into some other implementation that someone else might have screwed. So Salesforce ecosystem is quite small. So it's all up to all of us to have careful considerations in place, keep ourselves up to date, and document the rationale of why this particular decision was made, or why we chose certain things over other. Just give me 1 second. Perfect. So with that said, and I hope this resonates with all, we'll move on to the next slide, which is on in terms of, I just, yeah. Again, given this is a problem that we all face on a day-to-day basis, what does Salesforce have to say about this? till very recently, we did not have any such inputs or best practices from Salesforce as such. But recently, they have released, they have started the Salesforce Architect blog, and here you hear from the horse's mouth. And they have published bunch of decision guides. So what is important is like I found this particular section in terms of how they have evaluated different tools and came up with this decision guide, the steps, the key considerations. I found this quite relevant because tool and tool sets will keep evolving and there would be new tools. But we need a like a uniform approach whenever we need to make a decision. So yeah, this is not original content. It is all out here on this long blogs published by Salesforce. It's on Medium as Salesforce Architect. But yeah, just to summarize what has been said is like first is like identifying the tools which meet your requirements, which is quite obvious. But when we say requirements, breaking it down into functional performance and scalability requirements. And once you have identified your sets of tools, choose the tool which best leverage your available skill sets in your team. And the important thing to note is not the team which is going to be building the solutions now, but also think about the teams which are going to be running and maintaining your solutions in future. So, so you are pro in LWC and you build multiple components for everything, where there is straight away use case to use something simple like and probably you hand it over to an admin who's just starting his career in Salesforce and asking him to manage LWC. And in future, if there is an evolving requirement on an evolving platform, that guy would definitely struggle. So think about maintainability and long-term ownership while designing your solutions. And also in terms of yeah, think modular. Most of the projects these days are run in sprint pace. They are developed in sprint pace. So how you can particularly break a big piece of solution into modular pieces, and that's where this code, this config plus code kind of comes into play, which can help you break down the big requirements into small granular chunks. Cool. So with that said, I would. So again, there are this particular topic is quite wide. I would be sticking this. I would be limiting this particular topic to two decision guides that have been released by Salesforce, and these are the key things, uh, key decisions. One is around building forms, and the other one is around building record-triggered automations. So we'll go through these two topics, and there are a few more topics on platform around integrations and other things like that. Probably we'll park them for some point later. So in terms of form builders, um, so again, these are some of the options that we have available for building a form exposed to either an internal Salesforce user or to an external external community user. If you notice, in terms of the decision guide, Salesforce does not mention even page layouts. Again, that's obvious. Dynamic forms are the future. However, with that said, there are certain limitations of dynamic forms. So just be mindful that you might need to revert back to page layouts. And again, the dynamic forms are evolving and they would come at parity and probably leave page layouts way behind soon. But yeah, that's one thing. And the other options that are there for building flows is like your screen flows. Um, you can add in which you can embed different LWCs in it, building something with just LWC. And I would cover the Omniscript later. Again, this is like new way of doing things, new tool sets which would be now available at our disposal. And then we have app extension solutions like Form Assembly and other form builders. So let's just go through the decision guide around building forms. And this is quite yeah, quite important. Or it's quite straightforward, and this might be obvious to many of us. In terms of dynamic forms, like in terms of power, like you can do up to certain things, and they're limited in that way. But when you have to think about multi-step kind of a wizard, Flow is what is comes straight away to your head, and LWC is like allows you with the highest power and flexibility. You can design and define what exactly you need at a pixel perfect level, and also go fancy with it. But again, with that, you would be customizing a lot on the platform, leveraging less out of the box, which would mean the maintenance of the whole solution would increase, and the chances of something breaking would just go on increasing. So yeah, something like, yeah, and it's quite obvious, but yeah, it's so the idea is like lower in the spectrum you stick to, that's better in terms of your possibility of breaking something is less and less. So I'll just the three takeaways that are there in terms of, again, this particular guide, I would be sharing the links in terms of building forms, and it is quite a long guide, and it goes through quite a lot of things in terms of what about page layouts, exact performance, and how do you measure performance, and how do all of the solution rank against each other when it comes to performance, and different parameters, uh, in which one to use. So like in nutshell, there are the key takeaways from this particular decision guide. Yeah, for basic create edit form on lightning record page, stick to dynamic forms, and you can do a lot with dynamic forms these days in terms of conditional visibility, or your filters that you apply in terms of who sees what components, or go granular at who sees which section or fields. So that kind of power is now unleashed by dynamic forms. So if there's a use case being met by dynamic forms, which is a basic create edit form, stick to it. Flow for multi-screen forms, and 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 just uh, embedding lightning web components where uh, things available out of flow might not be sufficient. So the combination of Screenflow plus LWC, it's quite powerful. And to be honest, you can do quite a lot with this, using Screenflow as a starting base, as a wrapper around your whole multi-screen forms. And then the third takeaway is, if you need test automation, if you need to write unit test, in that case, LWC is the only solution at this stage. You cannot have unit test for your screen flows. Um, I hope that changes in future, but for now, LWC is the only solution which supports test automations. Uh, and now with this said, it again comes down to the things that we discussed earlier, as thinking about the skills that you have in this hand, and who is going to be managing the solution in future, and accordingly figuring out which are the tools which meet the requirement and shortlisting one. So this is around form, and this is quite a good read. This particular decision guide. Yeah, we might not be able to go through all of this, but it does go quite deep and covers everything. So please have a read. Cool. Uh, yeah, I guess like there's one thing is, like, even this particular decision guide is not up to date. So you will ask, there are the new tools sorry, which is Omni Studio. That's something which is released recently, and it is still to be. I'm not sure in terms of availability. So this is like after the Velocity acquisition, Salesforce has lots of goodies at their disposal, and namely your integration procedures, data raptures, your Omniscript, and Omniscript is something which is specifically around building your your visual screen. It's equivalent. It's analogous to your flows, your screen flows. However, in terms of updating this particular decision guide, it's not updated yet. However, there is this one comparing and contrasting of Omniscript with Screenflows. And to just summarize this particular thing, I would say Omniscript is whenever you are building something for your customers or partners or publicly exposed, and Screenflow is like your basic use cases for employer-facing requirements. With that said, there might be reasons for you to use Omniscripts for internal employees and flows for your external users. But the idea is choosing the path of least development is what Salesforce is recommending. Uh, but yeah, Omniscript is powerful compared to Flow at this where it stands at this point in some aspect, specifically around it is built with user interface first. Given that the reason behind Omniscript is developed is for public facing, your customer facing experiences to build those, and it supports custom style sheets where your screen flows do not support that extensively. You need to revert to your LWCs to style your screen flows if you need to style. So you can achieve kind of precise styling with this Omniscript, whereas with screen flows you cannot. And also in terms of integration with Google Analytics, looking at number of times something was clicked, or which step in the process the customers are leaving a particular journey. And all of those things are possible with Omniscripts by just integrating with or using the out of the box integrations with Google Analytics and other things. So that's where these two solutions differ, and this is kind of a decision guide what Salesforce is recommending. If it's an industry use case for a consumer and partner, stick to Omniscript. If it is an employee use case in a core cloud like Sales Cloud and Service Cloud, stick to Flow, and in the rest of the cases, stick to the path of least development. And understanding the roadmap of Omniscript and Screenflow, eventually these two tools will be merged. Not sure when that would happen, but eventually that might be that would be the end state. But meanwhile, if you have both of these tools available, Omniscript is not available out of the box. Currently it is like with any velocity package. If you have both of this available, then using this as a decision can come handy. Okay, we'll probably take the questions at the end. Moving to the next set of automation where we might need to write code or we might need to configure. And this is like the the key thing to note over here in terms of the tools that are discussed here, only Flow and Apex triggers is what is discussed in the whole decision guide. The reason being, Salesforce has set Scion Hara to process builder and workflows. Again, there are certain use cases where Flow is not there yet, and you might need to leverage either one of this if you are looking for a config solution. But Flow is improving with every release and would definitely go beyond. So, and I'm not sure about you guys, but I'm very happy when I heard this in terms of this thing. So the reason being, I've walked into implementations or I've built something where there was a process builder and a trigger, and just the performance lag caused by this tool was very bad. Until till this very point, when this decision guide was not released, process builder used to be the go-to solution for your point and click. But yeah, thanks for Salesforce to releasing this and saying sayonara to process builder. And the idea is to now use your record triggered flows. Now flows can also do your handle before event. So if you need to do a same record field updates, you can straight away do it in before save flows, and which is quite optimum in terms of the performance aspect. Yeah, and the other point is what Salesforce is recommending is for high performance batch processing needs or for sophisticated implementation, stick to Apex. But for anything which is simpler, which is straightforward, which can be done with Flow, stick to Flow. But again, use your own decisions. So let's say you have case object, which is the most critical object in your in your implementation. I would not recommending using both of this particular automation tool on the same object, an object which is as critical as case. So sticking to something like Apex can serve highly over there. But the point to remember is when you are coding, how you can extend your code, make your code configurable. So think custom metadata, think custom settings, and any other any other metadata frameworks that you can devise, which can make your code customizable. Uh, so that would be the idea. And in terms of when to select Apex after save flow and Apex triggers, so there are things you can do with flows. Again, it's like for sophisticated use case. Let's say you need to build a few maps and yeah, fancy maps, and you need to you can probably work around your way and build that thing in flow, but you might end up with, let's say, hundreds and hundreds of elements compared to your trigger. If written properly, that the same thing could be achieved in 30 40 lines. So sticking to Apex triggers is wise in this particular situation. And again, there is uh, no one right or one wrong solution, and that's where documenting, like considering all the options and documenting your rationale becomes quite important. Cool. Uh, Really, I would just like to show a couple of solutions that I had designed and built in past, which is pure code, Apex based code, but leveraging uh, making it configurable. So there are the two solutions. One is like uh, uh, roll up for lookup relationships, and the other one is reusable, like a big object archival engine. So let me just go with the big object first. Again, this is not a record triggered. This is you you run this particular batch job, and it converts your object. So just consider this use case. You have case object with task, and you need a way to convert this particular into big objects, archive them on basis of certain policy, all the records, all the cases that are closed in past and are older than 6 months, something like that. So this kind, if you get a requirement like this, the first intuition is like just go and start coding and build it for this particular use case. But that is where I would advise for using this kind of an opportunity to build kind of a reusable assets and start thinking how you can extend it. So we build it for case and task, and but we build it in a way that it's everything controlled via custom metadata. So you define your policy in terms of which object you want to be archived, what's the filter criteria in terms of your where clause, and also all the child records that also need to be archived, and what's the field mapping from your parent to child. Build it in a way that you have to build it once, and and yeah, and later the same engine can be used for essentially archiving any XYZ object. So this is how you write code, but write code in a way that you leverage your configurations to meet your need. And yeah, and again, like building a simple training guide alongside like a design like this, and assisting your admins in future if they want to use this particular asset, what should they do? As simple as that. So think reuse and reuse, and leverage the power of custom metadata while writing your batch logics or trigger. And probably also another use case. This is your lookup relationship. This is quite old blog that I wrote in 2018. And this has a link to the GitHub repo as well. However, I still end up using this particular package, and I know a few of my friends who have been using this package. So again, it's nothing new. It is something which was already built by Abhinav and Andrew around DLRS package. I just extended it to use the metadata. So if you need to define XYZ field needs to be rolled up, you just use a couple of metadata objects, and you yeah input the definition in those metadata in terms of this object, this field, needs to be rolled up with XYZ object and this field, and this is the operation that needs to be applied. So something as simple, yeah, again, so thinking about configurations and how you can enable your custom development and enhance your custom development by just allowing an admin to go and configure it, and yeah, which can unleash actually the power of what you write. So think reuse first. That's a kind of message that I want uh, yeah, share with this. And this is in terms of the record triggered solutions. But coming to the screen flows, it is where you use your screen flows as a base, and then you embed your LWCs as and when required. Not start with LWC, but start with flows as a starting point, and mash up flows or else Omniscript to begin with, and then leverage LWC, fallback on coding only when required. Perfect. And I guess the final thing, again, just to reiterate, when I planned to do this particular session, the decisions guide were not there, and now that they are there, it has made our life quite simpler in terms of again, it goes in quite a lot of details. So understanding them is quite helpful, and also it also speaks about the roadmap with these tools. So there are certain limitations. It covers those limitations and also highlights on the fact what would be in the roadmap and by when it would be coming. So utilize this record guides. But with all things said, what are additional pragmatic tips that I can share from my day to day? So the most important tip is like when in doubt, list all the options, do a proof of concept, document your findings in terms of against each and every option, what are the pros, cons, and considerations. Shortlist a particular option and then move forward. And the most important point over here is having things documented, because the reason why documentation is that critical is because of this point. What is best today might be suboptimal tomorrow. So to avoid the future generations which will come in to curse you because you chose something suboptimal, it's quite important you document all your thoughts and conscious consideration that went in behind defining a pattern or selecting an option. So it's quite important to think about tomorrow, because, for example, I walk into an implementation which has a straightforward use case of person account, and I was like, this is making not using person account is making my life miserable. But then I tried to look for the rational. What was the considerations at that point in time, and I find there were some limitations of person account, which were then which were then a limitation, now no longer a limitation. So having that documented helped me that this is the reason why they went with XYZ solution, and now this, given that this is no longer a limitation, we have an option to also consider, let's say, person account. But again, that this thing applies for all these things that you build. Um, uh, yeah, and specifically for complex designs which involve heavy coding. So yeah, and again, this might you might feel that it's not practical all the times, but uh, think, use things like your tech spikes or enabler stories for you to get some time off and to do this analysis. Uh, yeah, when in doubt. But the next important step is like treating your config as a declarative code. Again, it's a drag and drop coding that you're doing. So same best practices that you apply to your code, same best practices needs to be applied to your config. There is no difference. And yeah, when coding, always think scale and reuse, which I demonstrated earlier with those two solutions. And yeah, most of the times the simple solution is the best solution. So yeah, keep it simple, silly, would be the principle to use. Uh, yeah, I guess play by yours and your team strength, and yours and your to be operations team strength. So understanding what all skill sets you are available and on your hand at your disposal and what's the path of least development, you go and choose and stick to that. The other few important factors while defining or deciding is, as I said, something that meets your performance requirements. So think about any profiling needs or test automation needs or performance needs that you need to be mindful about while selecting an option. And this can, yeah, help you shortlist or narrow down onto a correct solution. Uh, while configuring, I'm not sure if it's a word, but it sounds similar to coding, and it's a similar act. So while configuring or coding, do not underestimate the power of naming variables in a way that makes sense to a layman. So I'm a big fan of variables which are long, but they actually make sense when you can read it as English, and making your code readable and config readable. The key essence is how do you name your variable. So name it in a way that makes sense to human, and not use a convention that make your head dizzy. So I've seen LST, XYZ, and blah blah blah, which one is not able to read. So how I'm not against conventions, but how conventions which make sense to a layman, and yeah, does not need a dictionary. So, and this applies to both your coding and your config variables. So Screenflows, your Screenflows or record triggered flows, name your variables in a way that makes sense. Because if flow goes beyond a certain point and you have so many elements in your flows, that variable name is what you would rely on heavily. I did cover this particular point, so I'll go to the next one. Yeah, this goes without saying, like, keep always learning and keeping yourself up to date. Uh, yeah, and that's where following blogs like Salesforce Architects come in handy, and revisiting this, not just reading it once, but revisiting after every release at times to see what was updated when, because the platform is evolving after every release, and there are lots of things on their roadmap, and for us to know where to look is more important than what we know right at this point in time. So if anything that you want to take away is probably two things, I guess. The architect decision guides that exist, and the other thing is probably like document, and so that you shield yourself from any auditing or anything that can come in your way at later point, and you can revisit that why did we do certain things. You have a proof. I guess that is all that I wanted to share in this particular session. But again, as I said, I wanted to be interactive. I wasn't sure of how to what do you say, unmute everyone. But again, if you guys can unmute yourselves, and probably we can do a round of Q&A, and also share some memorable or horror stories. So with memorable, I'm thinking about, yeah, like well thought implementations that you would have ever seen. Or with horror, I'm thinking about like infinite recursive loop. That there's a process builder, there's a workflow, and there's a trigger on this particular object, and that thing is leading into CPU time limit. That thing is leading into 100 plus SOQL queries and DMLs and all sort of governor limits. So I guess would be interesting to hear your thoughts on this topic, and how do you handle or make decisions on a day-to-day basis. So,
yeah. If anyone like to interact with Nikunj, let me know in the chat window. I will unmute. Anyone want to share something?
that is fine. I guess everyone is clear on this particular topic.
Ajay Patel asking to unmute. Okay, I will unmute that Ajay Patel. Ajay, I think you have the option to speak.
Are you able to hear me, Nikunj?
Right now, Ajay.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that overview. I'm very new to Salesforce, so just a question that as a new person, how I should go about learning the automation, because as a beginner, it's very overwhelming, all those automation tools, and I'm not sure where to start. So just need your guidance on that.
Sure. I guess if you're just starting with the platform, it's like like I guess there are good trail mixes and stuff that you can refer to, but I would say like there are many videos on any topic. Like you say flow, there are heaps of videos. You say trigger, there are heaps of videos. So would probably advise you to have a look at those. But most importantly, it's that the concepts are similar, Ajay. So if you understand triggers, you can easily reverse engineer and understand flows. So if you come from a coding background and if you're most comfortable understanding Apex, I would say understand your Apex triggers for your record triggered stuff and for your screen based things. Yeah, look at things like your dynamic forms and uh, your screen flows, which are quite intuitive and easy to understand to begin with.
Thank you, Nikunj.
Hi, Nikunj. How are you? Milind here.
Hey, Madan.
Hey, thanks for the session. It was good. I have a question regarding the big table. Not really big table, but I have a custom object in my project, right? So we have implemented the case management and a lot of customization happened, but not when I say a lot of customization is more about assigning because we have used email to case. And so when the case is coming in the Salesforce, we have some customization written like with the trigger where we need to find certain information from the email and try to look that information in particular object and get the data and find that particular record, matching record, and assign into that lookup field. Basically, we need to populate that lookup field. So it's like making some smartness in the case management where we, one case is like, it's related to this particular record, is related to that particular record, something like that.
Yeah.
Now, what happened is that it's been implemented, then we have to take it back. The only reason is that it was hitting a lot of CPU limit issues. The only reason we found that during the UAT, like it has like a millions of row in that object, right? And there is, and Salesforce straight away hitting the limit of not scanning that whole table because, of course, there is a number called 1002, and if I want to search that 1002 in that million row, it just says no. Yeah, I can't do it. It's a CPU limit more than what you're trying to do. So there are a couple of options like custom, like you can create, like we can request the support team to create indexes or skinny table. I'm not feeling comfortable. Like, what is the best approach we can think here? And it's like most requirement. They said no, we really need that requirement because it's like one of the MVP kind of requirements. So what is the best we can do here?
So first to begin with, like in this one, it's not a config versus code thing, and what you have code is the best solution that you have in play, and which allows you to maneuver around and do the right thing. And in terms of you scanning a particular large data volume object for each and every row, I would before, like without not thinking custom indexes, like skinny table would not be like the appropriate use case here. But before thinking custom index, I would look at the query that is happening, Milind, and how you can make it more selective and more restrictive. So narrowing down on basis of your case record type or a few other fields. So is there a scope to make that the scope or the number of rows that are being written limited? And there's a tool in developer console named as query plan. So you can try and experiment with different query plans, and which can give you a score, as in this particular filter is scanning is efficient versus this particular is not efficient. So would explore would ask to look at how do you make that query selector and use tools like QueryPlan. That's one. And the second option is, this is quite a common problem in terms of the large data volume on objects and you trying to scan. Nothing wrong with the code, but it's like the platform has evolved and more people using it, and you have heaps the years and years of data, and that's where archiving as a concept and keeping only what is relevant and what is required on the platform becomes essential. So also the solution that I was sharing right earlier in terms of taking the object into big object, the rationale is same. Yeah, the solution used to work fine yesterday, but it fails today because my volume has increased over the period of time. So and that's where the considerations around what are the volume that you're expecting and how your platform is meant to scale, those performance requirements and those scalability requirements becomes critical. Does that help answer your question?
Thank you.
Hi, Nikunj. Anish here. Thank you very much for the session. So I have two questions. Basically, it's not a complicated one, I guess. I haven't worked much on this big object concept, but I'm just trying to relate. Is it like using a Heroku to store large data volume or kind of archiving solution within big data or some? Is it similar concept, or and can we archive multiple objects like you talked about cases? Let's say we have cases and opportunity. So I never worked. I have seen that in the setups and everything, but yeah, if you can throw some.
So yeah, definitely. So big object is on-platform objects. I think it's again, it's not off-platform on Heroku or something else. So it's another type of object like your custom object. There is big object, and it has got the same setup screen where you create your objects and your fields in it. The only difference is the underlying infrastructure which is used for big object versus something like custom object is altogether different. And big object uses some like the big data technology, and I guess it uses edge-based database behind the scenes, which is optimized more from read perspective. So once you archive, once you archive you will not need to read it that frequently. So it is more optimized from writing it into the database perspective, and which compromises your reading speed. But yeah, it can store millions and millions of records without any limit. Just a point to note is it's a separate SKU, so you need to purchase those additional rows. It comes in blocks, but yeah, that's an additional SKU.
So I think it won't count against the storage also, right?
It will not count against your storage limit, your storage limit. That's right. And it is capable of storing millions and billions of rows.
Okay. And one more thing regarding a point you talked about having the same record fields using process builder and workflow. The workflow, I understand we may have to create multiple workflow, which is probably not a best practice if we have flow. But in process builder, using the same one specific rule on same object, we utilize different modes and do multiple field updates. So even flow, we can definitely create multiple paths and do the same thing in a better way. So the question is not a question, basically trying to identify, is it because of the performance you're saying flow is better in that case comparing to process builder, not about workflow?
Yeah, definitely. I guess that particular blog covers it in details in terms of the performance. And flow they themselves have proved flow to be 10 times more faster than process builder. And one of the key things that flow has, which process builder does not have, which is your before context. So if you need to make changes to the record before saving it into your database, earlier you only had your before triggers, your before insert or before update, where you can make tweaks to your records before committing it into the database. But now there is no declarative alternative of that. You can write process builder, but again, it's going to work in an after context, and it's going to start the whole life cycle again. But with flow, you have the option of tweaking that record before it is committed to database, and hence it is quite a lot faster. And probably from what Salesforce says, it's 10 times faster, and so that's a kind of rational. And again, debugging something like process builder is nightmare. So yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
So any other question from anyone? If no, then we can choose the random winner for the certification voucher. So I hope everyone filled that form. So I can see as of now 46 responses. So I'm giving you 1 minute time. So if anyone not completed the form, just to go ahead and fill the form. So the link already in the chat window. Okay, I'm taking that list from the form. So I can see 47 responses. So anyone filling the form? Okay. So I'm going to add that list of the attendees. So we added the list. So I'm going to select out of the part. Okay, someone I think added. Let me quickly figure it out. Who's added newly? Okay, I can see Vishal added. And then Mogini Prathan. Okay, all good. All the very best, guys. So the winner is Anish. And let me explain one more. Let's now the winner is Arnav Narayan. All the very best, guys. Please send me the message in the social channel. I think I already have your email ID, so I will distribute the voucher shortly. Thank you all once again for joining the session. I think it's a very informative session. I think you take away a lot of informative, like when you can use the code and config plus code. Even has shared with us for some use cases also for to rolling up the calculation for the lookup, if it is a lookup, and RQ for the big object. So using that, he shared with us. So once again, thanks you, Nikunj, for your valuable time to sharing your knowledge to the Trailblazer community. Thank you all, and stay safe. We'll see you in another one of the informative session. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.